And he said these seeds carried by birds had the most chance of survival because of the nutrients that were also packed in the bird poo. And at this moment, I just had it was like a light bulb just, turned on for me. I was like, this is it. How about, because my passion with trees has always been there. And I was like, oh my God, how about replacing or emulate nature and having birds being drones, and find a formula to prepare the seeds, load them in the drone, and have the drones do the work and restore degraded landscapes. So that's how it all started. You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do. And welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain, the last show for 2019 before we hit 2020. Here we come, another decade. And as many of you know who've been listening to the shows and watching the shows, we've been going through some times down under with the environment, and a lot of the channels that we've had on the shows over the last year or so have been talking about, desperate times, and we are in them right now. So I've got a gorgeous friend with me who is doing some amazing things, is accentuating the positive. His name is Aymeric Maudous. Welcome to the show, Emrick.
Thanks, Karen. Glad to be here.
As you can tell by his accent and his name, he was born in France and moved to Australia. How long ago did you move to Australia?
That was 16 years ago now.
16 years ago. Let me read your bio here, and so we can get a bit of a idea of who you are and what you've been doing. You've had a fascinating life. I met Emrick about 7 or 8 years ago through Eco Expo, and anyway, amazing person. So Emrick calls himself the chief rainmaker. As a child growing up in the south of France, one thing Emrick had in his garden was a tiny rectangular patch of earth his parents wouldn't mow. He would grow anything he could there, little violets and flowers, and ever since he was a kid, he was gifted with plants. He says, my family and friends used to bring their sick plants to me, and I would bring them back to life with love, care, and plenty of talking. My mum used to say, as a kid, I would grow a forest out of chopsticks. I think that is so cute. He knew all he needed was to get back to that feeling and he had when he was a child, and do something for the earth. But that's not the way your life unfolded. Emrick holds 2 master's degrees in international marketing and environmental management. He had a career as a brand marketer for Renault, Disney, Louis Vuitton, and also recently MaisonNets, and says it was a result of a shift in thinking, or what he describes his aha moment, that brought him back to the earth after working in the marketing world. But wow, that marketing experience must have given you so many great ways to sort of use those skills to market what we all need to. We all need to be sold in environmental issues and not more high heel shoes, let me tell you.
What, sold and inspired, man.
Inspired, yeah. He resigned from the corporate world because you say they did not have sustainability at their core in their business, and you didn't know what you were going to do, but promised yourself that whatever happened, you would listen to your heart. These last few months, Emrick has launched Lord of the Trees, which is the first commercial drone planting scheme, which we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Emrick's story, but also what he's doing with this Lord of the Trees, because it looks amazing. You say here, I now realize how important it is to cherish and honor the moment when you know you need to do something that makes sense only to you. It is a little seed that will grow. And as I said, I met Emrick because he was putting on Eco Expo, which was an expo showcasing environmentally friendly everything, like what people were doing on the land, and products and food and fashion and everything.
Yeah, it was everything to do with adopting a sustainable lifestyle at the time where, so this was now 8, 11 years ago, at the time where organic was, reserved for the elite because it was expensive. You couldn't find it in mainstream shops. And people were, the electric cars just, wasn't as mainstream as it is now. So yeah, it was, that's what started the journey.
Well, thank God that it's more mainstream. I mean, hooray for that.
Mm.
And so, look, I know what it's like putting on events and getting people interested. I remember, it was growing, it was expanding. You had a few hundred come and then a few thousand, and then it was growing. And then you were thinking, yay, people are really jumping on this. And I remember you made the whole expo free except for certain talks, I thought, which was a good model, where you would buy to see certain people talk about certain things that you were interested in. And but the people didn't turn up. That was your last one, right?
Well, it was the last one. It's something very interesting happened is ever since we've known each other and we came to, I think, all of the events, they were indoors. So we did them in, exhibition centers and halls. And for something that was eco and sustainable, I kept getting this feedback from most of the exhibitors that they wanted to do a show outside. And I approached the city of Sydney, and I told them about, so we had, 5 years or 5 or 6 years under our belt of running this show that was growing. And they were very keen to support. And with their partnership, we did the show at Prince Alfred Park in Sydney. That day was on record the hottest day of the year. And what could have been an amazing, incredible event turned out to be this really scorching day where I remember I had exhibitors with makeup. The makeup was melting. That's how hot it was. Some people with ice cream as well, organic ice cream. The ice cream was completely melted. It was so hot, it wasn't funny. So the people actually were there and you could find them under the trees in the shade, but where the event was, which was, right under the sun, it had this feeling of there was no one, but actually people were just there. They were like in the shade. And that, when we finished the show that night, Sydney had this torrential rain coming in for the next 10 days with this massive storm that we could see when we bumped out, which was absolutely incredible. So the weather held itself for our event. It was just too much of a beautiful day, unfortunately. So, yeah.
Well, I was there that day, and I remember I bought quite a few things which I've still got and cherished today, like a glass, water bottle, with rubber around it, and a few different things. But yeah, it was a good day, and some thongs from Kathy, makes the thongs, puts shoes on people's kids' feet, and look, yeah, all these amazing people selling amazing things. Tell me what your life was like growing up in France.
I had a very good childhood. I grew up in the south of France, in Bordeaux. And in a little part of Bordeaux called Saint-Emilion. So if you have any wine lovers amongst your followers, that's where I'm from. I'm from Saint-Emilion. My grandparents on my mom's side were farmers, and I've always been in contact with, so they had a little farm with animals, mainly cows, rabbits, a few sheep. And my grandparents have never, ever in their whole life bought any fruits or veggies from the supermarket.
Wow.
They used to grow absolutely everything. Everything was fresh. Everything was seasonal. What they were doing in summertime, there was a bit of an overstock. So my grandma used to freeze, things for winter, but all her life until they both passed away, they have never, and she was very proud, to tell the story as well. Every time we would, meet and have family dinners or big celebration, everything was always fresh and it was a very sustainable way of living, I guess, and eating in season as well. So I grew up in this environment where the earth, and we were living with, the earth and understanding the cycles of nature with the seasons.
Yeah.
In the south of France, where I'm from, we really have 4 distinct seasons. So, summer, fall, spring, and winter are very, very different from each other.
Distinctive, yeah.
Not like here in Australia, where it sounds to be like the endless summer.
So what made you go into marketing and working with all these big flashy companies like fashion, high fashion, luxury cars, and Disney?
Yeah, all of them were amazing schools. When I was at school, so I was at a very young age. On Wednesday morning, we had this, and I always wanted to be, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a vet. I love animals. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I was reading, collecting, cutting pictures of animals. I had my own little book, and that was my passion. And every Wednesday morning, we had parents who would come and, tell us what they were doing. And I never had a vet coming in, but one day this guy came in and was talking about all his travels, and he was working in business, and all of those trips and discoveries, and I was like, oh my God, this is like, it was almost like pixie dust in my eyes, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. And I suddenly took a turn at a young age, and I'm like, well, I'll go into business, and that's what I did. So at 17, I left France. I moved to America, where I lived there for 10 years. I got a degree in business in the States, my first bachelor in America. Then I joined Disney, which was, out of every company that I've worked with, was probably the best school for marketing and for, learning. And it was just incredible. I loved my time there.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I moved to the West Coast in California, in San Francisco. And I got my first master's in international marketing.
Wow.
And something really interesting happened, which was, so I lived in this block in San Francisco, in the middle of the city, and I lived there for 2.5 years. And out of these 2.5 years, I've experienced 3 Christmas parties. And the first one I didn't go, the second one didn't want to go. and so basically what it is, our block was 2 towers, and in the middle was a beautiful swimming pool and some sort of like community center, and all the neighbors would get there. And I never wanted to go, but that day I was coming back from school, and it was the last time I was going to be there. I was like, I had this feeling, it was really incredible. I had this feeling walking, passing that room, and I saw all those people I never knew, right? Those big towers, and I had this feeling that I had to be at a party. So I went upstairs and I told my flatmate, I'm going down to the Christmas party. And he looked at me, was very puzzled, and he said, oh my God, I said, I can't believe it. You're going to the Christmas. He said, you're always the one who's against this, the Christmas party. And I said, yeah, look, I don't know why. I have to go, and I have to go there. So I went there, and I grabbed a drink, and there is this, I don't know how to explain, but there was this person in the middle of the room. I have never seen her, met her, heard of her. She's a total random stranger. And she was in the middle of the room, and it's almost like the light, there was this spotlight on her, and I just went through her. I just went towards her, and she was talking to a girlfriend. And I introduced myself, and she was wearing this really beautiful necklace. And I said, that's a really interesting, beautiful necklace you have. And she said, thank you. And her girlfriend said, when you work for LV, you can afford it. And I said, what's LV? And she said, oh, it's Louis Vuitton. I'm like, oh my God. I said, it's amazing. I said, for the last, 5 years of doing business in France and here, I had a passion for the luxury industry, and I've collected, and I literally had a folder that thick in my apartment where I'd collected every single article from the industry, all the movements, what they were doing, what was happening with, And I just told her the story, and she said to me, she said, look, I'm about to leave. If you can bring me your resume before I finish my drink, I'll see what I can do. And the story in this is that when I was about to graduate, and I had sent maybe 50 or 60 emails to various, companies of that the LVMH group, and I still have to this day the 50 replies, which were all negative.
Denials, wow. The rejections, all, yeah, wow.
And this woman was actually the head for human resources for Louis Vuitton in San Francisco. And I brought my resume, and she was impressed, I guess, because the next week I had an interview, and it was, a series of 2 or 3 interviews, and I finally got a job. That's how I got into Louis Vuitton in the States.
This is so synchronistic, I can't tell you. I had a client this morning, and I said, what's in store for you for 2020? And really what the message was for her was say more yeses, because she's good at saying no, and coming up with all sorts of reasons why she doesn't want to go to the party, or she doesn't want to do this, or she doesn't like that, or something like that. And I said, okay, say more yeses. And she said, well, surely we get to choose our preference, and if we don't want to do something, then that's the right choice, right? It's like how we feel at the time. And I just believe that we have these desires to make a difference, to whatever desires we have, and the universe is bringing us to it, but we have to align, we have to say yes. And your instinct was, I don't want to know about those parties, but you were listening to something else outside of your preference of go to the party, don't go to the party. And it brought you exactly what you wanted at the time. Yeah, so the message for anyone watching this is say yes. Say yes in 2020. You'll never know how yeses can open doors.
Yeah. It's not about saying yes. It's about saying no as well, if it feels right for you. I think for me, the shift, this moment, what I realized is like this vibration, I just felt something happening, and I'm like, I'm just going to listen to that. So it's about trusting what's happening in the moment, and go with this, even if in your head, because now you're listening with your heart, even if in your head it's like, well, I don't want to go to
exactly.
Like, okay, well, you know what? Let's just fall into the heart for 1 second, and let's just go and see what happens.
Follow the impulse. Absolutely. So, wow, it sort of sounds like farm boy grows up, becomes, marketing director, and works for Louis Vuitton, Disney, and does the sort of...
I wasn't a director.
Hey? Not director or marketing person. And then comes back to the land. It's like you've kind of come full circle, but you've gained all this amazing wisdom and design prowess and marketing prowess along the way. And now you're kind of back working with the land. We could go into more of your story, but I think that what we want to talk about is what you're doing with Lord of the Trees.
Yeah.
We had a meeting here at my house the other day. A few of us were gathering, and one of the people was saying, I think we need to do something more proactive. Why don't we go out and plant some trees? Why don't we get a group together and go out and plant trees? And then the next day you send me, look, Lord of the Trees. Let's have a listen to what's going on with Lord of the Trees.
Yeah. So I moved to Australia 16 years ago, and exactly 16 years ago, it was a birthday lunch that I was invited to at one of my clients. And this person, so there was about 20 people sitting at the table, and this person in front of me was telling the story of this guy that he knew, was a friend of his, who lives in Western Australia and plants trees in the middle of the desert with no water. And I was so fascinated with his story. It was just amazing that I made sure before I left the lunch that I had a way to contact this person. Mm-hmm. And 3 weeks later, I was on a plane to Perth. David Kenneth, that's his name, came to pick me up, and we drove 300 kilometers east of Perth. And by the time we reached his property, so there is no more road. It's now a dust road. You look right, left, and all the way up to the horizon, and all you have is sand, and it's really a desert. And what David has done for the last 18 years now, he had a calling, and he bought a piece of land which was the most degraded out of all the plots that were for sale. And the satellite pictures actually show his property as being white, which the satellite picked up this crust of salt that was on his land. And despite the advices from the real estate to, not buy this land because he said you'd never be able to grow anything, he did. Because he had this instinct that he would be able one day to, grow and restore the ecosystem. And he's got this unique technique of planting trees using no water, only at the beginning when he plants the seedlings. And we've been friends ever since. And at the time, we tried to do something with my marketing background and anything, but it just wasn't the right time. It just things I've never been. It just wasn't the right time, and we've been friends ever since. And I went back to visit him years later. He came to Eco Expo as well in Sydney one year, and very recently, 3 months ago, I was watching a documentary on TV. And it was a documentary about the Galapagos Island from David Attenborough. And David is in one of the oldest island, which is now a proper rainforest with its own ecosystem and trees, insects, and everything. And he said before this island became what it was just a giant rock that came out from an underwater oceanic volcano, and it was this bare black land with nothing in it. And the way plants arrived was first with, they were carried through the cold currents that would hit this island. So we're mainly talking here about coconuts that would float and hit the beach. And after that, you had little seeds that were light enough to be carried by the wind. But it was very random as well, because when a seed carried by wind lands, it could be on the right, on the island itself, and 1 centimeter on the left, it goes into the ocean, so it's lost. And the last image that he was showing in his documentary was this bird, and there is this seagull that comes and that poops, and he said, these seeds carried by birds had the most chance of survival because of the nutrients that were also packed in the bird poo. And at this moment, I just had it was like a light bulb just, turned on for me. I was like, this is it. How about, because my passion with trees has always been there. And I was like, oh my God, how about replacing or emulate nature and having birds being drones, and find a formula to prepare the seeds, load them in the drone, and have the drones do the work and restore degraded landscapes. So that's how it all started.
So what I'm hearing is the birds that are carrying the seeds, obviously the bird seed's gone through the digestive system, the seed's gone through the digestive system of the bird. So it's picking up sort of nutrients and stuff that's in the poop as well. It's picking up stuff. Like, are you creating that same or similar formula as you plop the seeds into the ground?
All right. So it's a formula. I can't say too much at the moment, just because it's a bit of a trade secret. But we have some nutrients that will help with the germination of the seed. So we are not forcing, we're emulating nature. We're not forcing the seeds to germinate. We're giving it a chance, as soon as it germinates, to have bioactive nutrients readily available for it to grow into a strong plant.
Okay.
So we're really working with nature here.
You can put these seeds in an arid landscape and it'll grow.
Correct.
Have you tried it? Have you tested it? Is it working?
So the testing has been done last year by another organization that we're partnering with. And the challenge, not the challenge, what we're working on at the moment with the drone is the cedar. So the drone it's a commercially off-the-shelf commercial drone. So we're not doing anything about that. I'm not building a drone. The drone already exists. It's the cedar. So it's gonna take us 6 months. So we're already halfway into this process. Because what we're doing is we're not just throwing seeds out of a plane, out in the air with the hope that, they're just going to land miraculously in the right place and grow. There is extensive research in the plant kingdom in regards to symbiotic relationship in between plants.
Yeah.
And David has been working relentlessly on this for the last 18 years in the site called Oya in Western Australia, where plants will grow and respond to each other depending on what is growing next to them and at what is the length that another species need to grow and what is that species. So there was a lot of trial and error, and there was a lot of feedback as well from the local Aboriginal community that would say, you know what, here you're doing the right thing. Here, why don't you try that? And by doing this, he has perfected a formula of native trees that will grow symbiotically really well, and that really in nature, that's how those plants evolved. And they protect each other. One is going to bring nitrogen into the ground, the other one with the leaf is going to protect it and prevent invasive species to grow. And so nature has a way to work, it's not just one species, and we're going to do that. So the cedar itself is really the brain of this operation, and we're developing our own software program that will on demand tell the drone to drop what seeds exactly where.
Mm. Are you talking about the Synchronicity planting that I saw this guy when I was up in Byron who did a talk. He started with a guy in Brazil who talked about Synchronicity planting. This man in Brazil has been planting. You know what I'm talking about? Anyway, he did a great talk about it. I'll have to remember the guy's name. I'll send you the information. It's exactly what you're talking about. And this guy's done it in Brazil. So he talked about how, there's a cycle. Trees die, and then some trees die quicker than other trees. So you plant in a way where they're sort of dying, but it's always forever building. Instead of entropy, syntropy. So entropy, where everything sort of breaks down and dies. Like when something breaks down, it's feeding the next thing that's growing, and then the next thing that's growing. So he's talked about all the levels of the trees. Is that what you're talking about, or is this something different?
Yeah. So it's linked to something like this. And when we restore landscape, the aim is to not just plant trees, but we're going to. So there are 5 layers that we'll be targeting from the ground cover all the way to the upper canopy. So a ground cover will have seeds of wildflowers that will encourage, bees and other pollinators and little mammals as well to come and take refuge amongst it. Then you have the trees all the way up to the trees in the upper canopy, the big trees, and there is a timing as well. So obviously the ground cover will be the first one to germinate, and then you have the little seeds from the trees that will come after.
So what's the dream with it? What would you like to see? Like, where would it be used? Where would it,
So it's a very topical subject in Australia at the moment. So after fire, or if a forest has been logged, that's where we would come in. After mining as well. So,
after mining,
19.9% of the time when the mine is closed, you have this big hole in the ground, and we would come in. So anywhere where the landscape has been damaged, burned, logged, or if there is, or that's really hard to reach, right? That's when we would come in. So a person during a regular day shift could plant, a really good person, a trained person could plant around 800 seedlings a day.
Mm-hmm.
And with our drones, we are making the drones to plant 250,000 seeds per day. For the same amount of time that this person would plant 800, we can plant 250,000. So exactly 288,000 seeds. So
Wow.
it's a quarter, yeah. So it's during a day shift, right? So our drones can work at night. So you multiply that by 2. So it's 500,000 trees in a day, and 1,000,000 in 48 hours. That's the goal.
And tell me, where do the seeds come from, Emric?
So they'll be locally sourced, and we're going to be working with seed banks for that. So I don't know if you're aware, but everywhere all around the world, you have those banks that actually, instead of currency, they hold seeds.
Okay.
And you have people in, who go into the wilderness and collect seeds for those banks, and then they get stored. And whenever you have clients who want them, like on a commercial level, or even at a lower level, they can go and buy seeds from those banks.
Right, I didn't know about seed banks. There you go.
Mm.
And who's going to be doing this? Is it going to be governments or people that are raising money to do it? Like, who's going to be actioning this?
Yeah, so we're targeting the business model. So it's new. I don't know if it's going to work. I'm making myself very vulnerable here. This is a new business, and when I did my master's in environmental management, coming from a background of a really strong corporate background, there is a really strong gap between the business side and then the side of, say, the NGOs that are on the ground doing the right thing, right? And there is a gap, but that gap is really wide. Mm-hmm. And what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to bridge that gap, and I'm trying this business model. Don't know if it's going to work, but I'm targeting on the corporate side, so federal governments, mining and agriculture as well, if for people who have bigger areas in agriculture where they want precision planting. And on the other hand, at the same time, I'm doing partnerships with NGOs that are on the ground and replanting the forest. Now, the federal government, the mining, and the agriculture, these are business-to-business transactions. So I would be dealing directly with the government or the mining companies. And for the NGOs, I'm involving the community. So the proceeds coming from those funds will be separated. They go to a completely different account, and we use that money to, at the beginning, help us pay for the technology, mm-hmm. and we give the rest to those NGOs that are on the ground already planting trees. So until we have the drones operational that can work in those parts of the world, we're helping them to plant seedlings. And as soon as the seeder is ready, those NGOs will be ready as well to welcome us and see what we can do with the drones. And the 2 NGOs that we are starting with one is in Western Australia. It's a planting site called Oria. And the second one is in Sumatra in partnership with the Orangutan Republic Foundation.
What's the one in Perth called? Aura?
Auria, Auria.
And they plant trees. So what's the dream, Emric? Like replenishing? I have a friend who said that he wanted to replenish the desert of Australia. He told me this about, 20 years ago. And I'm like, wow, that's a dream.
Yeah. I've always had a dream like this, a bit similar. There is one happening at the moment in Africa where they're trying to rebuild a corridor between East Africa and West Africa. Uh-huh. And I've always looked at the map of Australia and thought, wouldn't it be amazing to have, the train that goes from Sydney to Perth?
The Garn, yeah.
Wouldn't it be amazing to have on one side, you can have the beautiful Australian landscape, and on the other side, you can have this amazing green corridor that follows, the trend line, and that would revegetate, this part of Australia and restore the landscape.
You know, Emrick, I don't know, last year, I can't remember, recently, I had an Aboriginal um, spirit guide come to me and tell me, I had always held this question. I flew over the States probably about 15 years ago, and like diagonally right over the States, and looked down and thought, my God, this country is so lush. Looking at the mountains and the forests and you fly over Australia and you kind of can look out for hours and just see red dirt, like just red. And I thought, why is Australia so barren? Why? So held this question. And then I had this Aboriginal dude turn up and tell me that there had been a reason that Australia had been so barren. He said that it had kind of been a part of Gaia that had been set aside for future Earth, and they didn't really want mass population in Australia in its current consciousness, that when we've become more unified and more conscious of who we are, connected to the Earth and connected to each other and connected to Source, then the land would replenish, and that in years to come Australia would be as lush and I always wondered, how that's going to happen. Like, this is talking in years, like well past our lifetimes. But you're kind of hitting on, like you're making it happen.
Very good. Look, I just want to be part of the solution. So I think it's, I come back to that story I told at the beginning, that feeling that you have inside. And I just want to, I love the planet. I'm a big plant person, and I just want to be part of the solution. I want to do something every morning when I get out of bed that makes me, I want to feel fulfilled, I want to be excited by my day. And when I go to bed, I want to be like, you know what, I've done something good today. I think that's really important for me at this stage.
Yeah, it's really important for everybody, I think, at this stage in our human evolution. Yeah, for people to make a difference and feel good about it. And I think, well, this is exciting. So how can people get involved and what can they do? Obviously, you're looking for funds to sort of develop the project.
Yeah. So you can have a look at the website. So if the community wants to be involved. So I'm looking for partners, for land to, where there is needed. So planting sites, definitely. But if the community wants to be involved, they can buy tree certificates for their loved ones via the website. And we'll plant the trees, as I said, in those first two sites, one in WA and one in Sumatra, in partnership with the Orangutan Republic Foundation. And the tree certificates are delivered to your loved ones, your family, your friends.
So why Sumatra? Isn't Sumatra quite lush?
It is, but the issue that the big problem that they are facing is the orangutan population lives in a very small part of the island, and the forest is being cut extensively to make room for palm oil plantations.
Mm-hmm.
And you're destroying the plant. And literally those plantations, I don't know if you've ever seen any of this, but it's a giant green desert. So
Really?
it looks like green, but there is nothing, the insects don't even go there.
Really?
It's really sad, and they're only grown for the palm oil industry. So that's the problem.
How do you get around that? Because people, the thing about cutting down forests to put in industry, people think that it's the only way they can make a living in countries like Sumatra and South America and other places. They think.
So there's a lot of education that goes into those programs as well. Gary Shapiro, who is the director of the Orangutan Republic Foundation, whom I met for the very first time face-to-face a couple of weeks ago here in Bali, explained to me that what they do is they go to those villages and they actually explain and show them, they say, look, yes, you're going to make money today, but this is what's going to happen to you in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. And this is what has already happened to those other tribes who took the money. So so there is a way to reconnect with the land and looking at not just make a quick buck right here, right now, and lose, any chances that you have as well later in the future of survival, because those people are really dependent on the forest, not just for food, but also, for medicine and clean water and clean air. And suddenly when they're left with nothing, and as soon as there's a bit of rain, the landscape cannot support the ground anymore. And you have those mudslides and their village get destroyed. There is no more clean water. And the air that they breathe is, very polluted with the burning of the forest. And there's just nothing. All the insects have gone. The ecosystem is very damaged. So education
Absolutely.
is really important as well.
Education. Yeah. Well, it's a big task, and it's so exciting to hear people like you who are using technology and your brilliant sort of skills that you've learnt along the way, your passion for Gaia herself, and your incredible marketing and design and skills to come up with solutions for what we're going through. Because you see people around the world screaming about the environment, like all the kids and that Greta Thunberg's got screaming around the world, but this is a solution, and I think people can get behind it, and I can introduce you to a couple of people that I think will get on board with you, definitely. So more to come, Emrick, more to come. Love to talk to you in a year or two and see what's happened. Yeah, the thing about trees is they don't grow overnight, do they? But
no, exactly. But I mean, it's the challenge. Whatever you do, I mean, this is my view. I think with the environment, you don't need a degree. You don't need to go to a fancy school or anything like this. Everyone can do anything today. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm not, I don't think it's good to feel like you have to carry the whole world on your shoulder all the time. Just pick one thing. It doesn't, for me, it's trees, okay, because that's me, that's who I am. But for anyone watching, just pick one thing. It could be plastic, it could be something to do with water, it could be growing your own veggies, it could be anything to do with fossil fuel or your solar power, or just pick one thing and just do something that you haven't done before.
Yeah.
And something that you can measure as well.
Yeah.
And see how you feel, and just do this one thing. Because if one person can then see you do that one thing, and you can inspire this person to actually be like, oh, you know what? I can do this as well, or I haven't thought of that. How about I tried myself? Like, that's how I think that the change will happen in the world. So just pick your one thing. For me, it's trees. I pick trees. There's a lot of things, I do a few things. Obviously, I don't just do trees, but I give you an example. I have a little dog that I share with a girlfriend of mine, and every time we go walk the dog, which is twice a day, 2 or 3 times a day actually, we always pick up things that we see in the streets, so like many plastic and cigarette butts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and every day we make sure that every time we go, we just pick at least, 3 pieces of plastic.
Yeah.
Change. There's a lot of things we can all do and start doing now. And I think that will
make a difference. Yeah, I know. I actually, try my best to be a vegan. I call myself a megan, which is like mostly vegan.
It's actually, or VIP, vegan in progress.
Vegan in progress. That's me, vegan in progress. I love it. Because really, I mean, there is that cruelty to animal things. I'm not up with the kind of like we kill them to eat them, because I don't think animals worry about dying. I think they're more enlightened with us. They understand that you can never die, you just leave your body. But it's the cruelty of the animal things, but it's the environmental impact that meat and the dairy industry has that really kind of made me go from vegetarian to VIP. I just went, oh wow, I didn't realize that the industry was so destructive on our environment.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's my one thing. I still worry. I go to a supermarket and just see plastic after plastic out. I don't know. Somebody's got to sort the plastic out. I don't know. Someone's got to sort that. I
You
don't
know,
know who.
yeah, things are changing, and I tell you a story which is very local to here. So, by the way, I don't live in Bali. I live in Sydney. I'm just here
Oh
on
yeah, you're
holiday
in Bali at the moment. I know the beautiful Bali. Speaking to
for
Emrick in Bali at the moment. Yeah, sorry. Tell us your story.
the end of the year. But I came here, so it's December now, and I came here. The last time I was here was earlier this year in January, and I was horrified. And when I say horrified, I don't think that the word is strong enough, but I was horrified by the amount of plastic that this beautiful island was giving, or for anything, like seriously, bananas were wrapped in plastic. Things that had um, anything you could think of. I can't. It was like this plastic sea every time I would come back from the supermarket, and I got really upset. And I would always, and I'm very conscious about it. Like if I see things wrapped in plastic, I just decide not to do this. And I was talking to a few local person here, and I said, "No, that's really a problem. Do you think things are going to change?" And I was very happy to notice later that year, I was reading an article that Indonesia, and especially Bali, from comments made from tourists on social media that were horrified by the amount of plastic, because all these plastics ends up in the ocean. So when you go to the beach in Bali, sadly, as lovely and beautiful as it looks, I've been on this island at the time where it's the rainy season at the one where the plastic just comes back on the shore and the waves carry all those plastic bottles and junk, and it's really disgusting. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I carry as much as I can back to the bin, but it was just chaotic. And because of the pressure of those people commenting, they passed a new law that now plastic in supermarkets is forbidden. So
Wow.
everybody now, I was so happy when I go grocery shopping, everyone here has their bags that they reuse, and they don't give any more plastic shopping bags at the end. So it's a start in the right direction,
Absolutely.
and I'm very happy for that. So I I'm the eternal optimist. I
Mm-hmm.
know there's a million things you could be upset
Mm-hmm.
with every single day just from reading the news or looking what's happening in the environment. But I take the approach that I think that for everything that we focus on is like a stick, right? And there is the good end of the stick and there is the bad end of the stick. Everything has this. And it's your decision every day to put your attention on which end of the stick you want to. And I choose as much as I can to put my attention on the good end of the stick and focus on the positive, because I know if I put my energy there, more will come, more will resonate in terms of positive energy and outcomes and things that will happen in the future.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Where your focus goes, energy flows. Absolutely. Yeah, focus on what you want and not what's causing what you want. Yeah. So there's a lot of people screaming about how it's all going wrong, but yeah, focus on the dream. What's the dream? That's why I always say to people, what do you want? What's the dream? And when people are so focused on what's going wrong, it's funny, they go, what do you mean? It's like they don't understand the question. Well, what do you want? I don't know what I want. I'm so focused on what I don't want that I don't know what I do want. But as you say, two ends of the stick, what you don't want and what you do want, slide your focus up to that other end of the stick. Emric, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been
Yeah,
such a
thank you so
joy.
much.
I
Yeah,
could
that was.
really,
Yeah,
sorry, go
thank,
on.
no, thank you. It's always great to talk to you. I follow you. I've been following you all those years on social media and listening to you. Yeah, because the first time we met, we was a radio show.
I was on
That's when you.
community radio, yeah. I think I
Yeah,
was talking about Eco Expo, right? We were sort of plugging Eco Expo, getting people to come along.
yeah.
Yes, well, yes, I know. It's optimistic. There is hope out there. There is brilliant minds doing amazing things. There's that guy that's got oh, what's that? Ocean One. He's cleaning up the plastics in the ocean, and he's now cleaning up the plastics in the. I follow him. What's he called? Anyway, I'll put a link underneath it.
I mean, closer to home in Sydney, we have Team Silverwood as well, who has a wonderful organization called Take 3 for the ocean. So every time you go,
That's right.
you just pick up 3 pieces of rubbish. So that's actually how I got inspired to do that.
Take 3, yeah.
Take 3 for the ocean, yeah, it's great organization.
Absolutely. I went for a walk yesterday. I was doing that. I walked beside the tennis courts here. There's a little corridor that goes to a park, and it's almost like this little corridor. People just think it's a dumping ground for rubbish. So I'm just picking up all this rubbish. I wasn't taking 3, I was taking so much more, thinking, why do people think that the earth is just one big garbage bin? Like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. Oh, there's a little corridor. Let me just drop all my crap down there. Yeah. But anyway, we need to educate people, as you say.
True. Well, educate and inspire as well.
Inspire people. Absolutely inspire people. And please share this with anyone that cares about Gaia and the environment. And please share the Lord of the Trees. Why did you call it Lord of the Trees? I love the name.
Okay, so the name came 4 years ago, 5. Okay, so there's a little story. I don't know if we have time for this, but
yeah, we got time.
Just edit it. But 4.5 years ago, I started this page on Facebook for trees, anything to do with trees. And very randomly, I was putting, and it was really not my attention, but when I saw a picture of a tree that I liked, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to post it. And for 4 years, I only had on that page 110 followers, and those 110 followers, all of them were my friends. Okay, they're all friends from Facebook. So, and people that I knew really closely, who were like, you know, at the time when you start a new page, you say, you know, who do you want to invite amongst your friends? And I think those 110 friends were like, yeah, okay, I'm going to do it. And about 5 months ago, I posted this picture, which I think about it was a great picture. I mean, I thought it was great. So at the time, you know, 4 years ago, I called this Lord of the Tree. I don't know why. And I had a picture of a little man that looks a little bit like Tarzan. That was my logo at the time. And I was like, you know, maybe one day something will come out of this page. And it was never the focus. And about 5 months ago, I posted this picture, and the very next day, I remember I was coming back from a walk, from walking my dog, and I'm sitting on the lounge, and I get this beep on my phone, and I see it's a notification from Facebook, and I'm like, oh. And I look, and it says, we just want to tell you the picture that you've posted, the last picture you posted on North of the Trees had gone viral. And I'm like, what? And I looked, and from 110 followers, there was more than 2,000 people, and then 2 became 3 and 4 and 5, and every day I was getting, and this is the most commented, liked, shared picture that I've had on this page to date. And I couldn't understand what happened, but what I did was I took it as a sign. I'm like, you know what, this confirms that this is the road to take. I really embraced it as being a sign, and that's when I started to put my energy into the trees and go back to and see what I had done in the past. So it was very easy for me because my experience that I had when I went to visit David in Western Australia, and so that's how it really started.
Oh, okay, that's a great little story. I love that. You'll have to send me the photograph of that tree. I'll put it up for some people who are watching this.
Yeah.
Send me the viral tree. Oh, how beautiful, Lord of the Trees.
It's actually, you know what? It's to be funny enough, this picture has no tree in it. So there's no tree in it. I mean, I will send you the picture. It's the most amazing thing, right? For a tree page, my picture was the most, that had gone viral has absolutely no trees in it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, you called yourself, I asked you, what do you call yourself? You said Chief Rainmaker. And really that the trees do create the rain, don't they? The more arid the earth, the less rain it attracts. And the more lush, the more rain it attracts. So, so I guess planting trees is being a rainmaker, right?
Yeah. Well, I was watching a documentary, so I'm not a scientist. but I've watched this absolutely amazing presentation the other day, one of the TED Talks, and this guy was talking about trees and the chemistry that goes into, so the trees release some chemicals that go in the air, and when you have enough of those chemicals at the right altitude and given the right conditions, then rain clouds start to happen, and that's what happens in the rainforest. That's when rainforests are so important, because they create their own ecosystems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I was speaking to Penny Kelly, one of the people I had on the show, and she was shown years ago, like 40 years ago, some little men in brown robes showed up and showed her all this stuff about Earth and what was coming if we didn't clean up our act. And she wrote a book called The Robes, which talked about coming changes. Anyway, they showed her, they went like a couple of hundred years into the future, and they showed her a future time, and they showed her how it was happening. And it was just interesting, you talking about your family or mother having only eaten, or your grandparents only eaten food that they grew. So this, in this future time, this is what happened. There were no central organization. There was no place where you go and buy food like supermarkets. Everyone had their own kitchen garden, she quoted. And there was this technology where there was this dome that looked like it was made out of plastic, but it was a technology that was not plastic, that you could put anywhere in the earth and it would create its own ecosystem, and you could grow anything underneath it, under this dome. And it was called the kitchen garden. And like families and groups and communities had these kitchen gardens, and they would literally, and she said when she looked in the cupboards, there was no food in the cupboards because everything was on the earth. And so food came only from the earth. There were no canned foods. So it was really interesting hearing her describe this future time where we're kind of going back to how we were, but then we're using technology that we don't have now. So it's fascinating. I found it fascinating what the future holds.
I read a story very recently of this guy he lives in Florida, and he moved in this very nice suburb, and he actually shows, you can see his neighbors, like the houses are really nice, and they all have the most immaculate lawns, in front of their homes. And what is done is ripped the whole lawn, and he's planted a food forest. Right. And he does not buy any food from the supermarket. He's grown every fruit trees and veggies, and everything is there within his, quarter of an acre, little plot, and it's sustainable for him and his family. And I think we'll reach a stage where needs are going to be more important than, having lawn in front of your house. And here is something as well that people who are listening to the show could do if they have, lawn like this, is to plant, natives and flowers for the bees, because we have to support, the bees.
The bees, plant flowers for the bees, fruit trees and flowers for the bees, absolutely. I'm just looking at my tiny plot of land out there. It's lots of flowers in it. I love my flowers. All right, we're going to sign off now. That was a long sign off, but lots of stories to share. And I look forward to seeing how Lord of the Trees unfolds, and more brilliant minds coming in with their technology. It's like using technology and nature together. It's just fascinating.
Right.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Wow. What an amazing man with a brilliant mind doing amazing things in the world. What's the one thing that you're going to do this year or next year that can make a difference to the environment? As Emrick said, just pick one thing. Just pick one thing. Plant some trees, stop eating meat. I don't know. Go to sustainable shops that don't sell things in plastics. There are more shops like that popping up. It does cost a lot more. Buy organic. Go to the market to buy your food. That's what I try to do. I don't always do that, I have to say. Try to buy from markets where you're buying things that are not wrapped in plastic. Or grow your own food. Get that little plot of land or a couple of pots. I haven't got a plot of land. I've got some pots. I've got a little herb garden on my windowsill, just herbs. And start planting food. Plant some flowers for the bees. There's so many things we can do. Start a group. Yeah, start a group, plant a veggie garden on the medium strip in your suburb. There's so many things we can do. The regreening of the earth, bringing back the regreening of the earth. I love that you can buy walls of green. Like there's a big library of my friend works at, and they spent all this money building this new library because they had this old library going for years. And when you walk in, the first thing you meet is this massive wall of green. Inside this building, they'd put these pots and all the way up this wall of green inside a building. It was amazing, beautiful too, beautiful, brings oxygen to the air, makes you happy. Oh, look, there's so many things. But being with the earth and planting things, it's a way to get happy. Get happy, as Esther says from the teachings of Abraham. Get happy. Yeah, as powerful, deliberate creators. I hope you're all having a beautiful end of the year and enjoying the holiday season and loving the people around you and celebrating whatever belief that you celebrate at this time of year, and just loving more and loving the earth more. I think I'm going to talk much more about Gaia next year. I think that's the focus. That feels like the focus anyway. Talking about how we can nurture her, bring her, be more in tune with Gaia. Emrick's inspired me. Imagine you can plant millions of trees a day. Wow, that's the solution to climate change. We're putting CO2 into the air, carbon dioxide, and trees eat carbon dioxide. So the way to get the carbon dioxide out of the air is to plant more trees. Let's do it. 2020. Plant trees. And if you want to maybe plant a whole lot of trees, contact Emrick and check out his amazing Lord of the Trees and the drones planting the trees. It's very exciting. I'm excited. All right. I love you all. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. I said that last time. It's like Krishna Xmas, but anyway, I'm trying to be funny. And I'll see you soon. Mwah. Big love.